Hello, everybody. I know we've been gone for a long time, but we're back.
We're back. Is
With-
that your standard intro to the show?
No, there's not a standard. Intro.
Hello, everybody.
There's not a standard intro to the show at this point. It's just whatever we feel like saying. Like, hello, hello.
No, I like it.
We're,
I
we're
like
here
it.
for
It's like jazz.
yeah.
It's about the intros you don't say. I'm sorry if I'm a bit testy. It's early in the morning.
Yeah, it is very early in the morning. Today, Brooks and I are recording the second part of the episode dedicated to the Killer's Wonderful, Wonderful album. And then later on, after we've done some other stuff, I'm going to go pick up Josh and we're going to hammer out 3 or 4 different recordings.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh,
Backlog them.
have fun with that.
No, it's not going to be fun, but
You see, when we do 100 years,
Mhm.
sometimes we'll do double recording sessions
Mhm.
if we know that if more than one of us is going to be kind of unable to record in the coming weeks. And those are usually a nightmare.
Yeah, I can imagine. We're just gonna lock ourselves down in my basement and hammer it out until we've got everything, and we're like, that's good. We can now not record for another 2 months because that's
Right.
how our schedule will go anyway. Be like,
Right.
we can't meet up for another 2 months or whatever because we're both fucking busy. But
I feel kind of bad when talking about podcasts and recording and scheduling. We recorded. If anyone listens to Brooks and Zach 100 Years, you'll have noticed that episode 98 did not come out when it was supposed to, and I always hate it when we record an episode and then I try to get around to editing it, but just a bunch of shit gets in the way, and then it's delayed by a day, and then 2 days, and then it's always painful when it reaches the point of you look at it and it's just it just makes more sense to delay it the full week than to release it now.
right,
When I have time to edit it, it's already too late to put it up now, so it would make more sense to just wait until the next week, and then whatever recording we do this week will be delayed the following week.
right. And what I like about this recording setup, you've got going with the soundboard and everything, thanks to our buddy Liam.
Our good boy Liam.
Say hi, Liam. He says hi.
They can't. Oh, whatever.
Is that it because it's all one channel? I don't have to sync it up to so that to the point where and sometimes when Josh and I do Skype calls or something for a recording, it goes out of sync gradually because of the connection or whatever. So if we hook them up and at the beginning it's synced up perfectly, if I jump to the end of the session, it's gonna be we're talking at the same time, but he's in the conversation a minute behind I am.
Yeah. We haven't had to do Skype recordings yet, but that is no doubt something we will have to deal with in the future. So I'm not looking forward to that.
Yeah.
What was I gonna say?
I mean, you could probably do all you guys on one and then maybe Yaskovich on the Skype call, which theoretically wouldn't be too bad. That's only one channel we have to sync up with the others.
Right.
But because you guys are all on one channel, it'd be a bit more difficult to sync him up into the conversation.
But as someone who is pretty much uniformly used one channel recording when making the podcast, it can also be its own special little bundle of joy when it comes to people talking over each other. And my kingdom for the ability to just mute one or more of the guys when the other ones are talking.
You have been listening to You'll Like 'Em's special interview series with Brooks Vernon
Our
from 100 Years.
Our special episode entitled Brooks Talks About Shit That Annoys Him.
Yeah. So, anyway, on the last episode, we did talk about the Killer's Wonderful, Wonderful. We give some background on it. We spoke about the first 2 tracks before we ran out of time. Months have passed.
Yeah. If you want to, we did that around the release of the album, which was months, like literal months ago. And just like with the way things kind of shook out, like with schedules and like all that stuff, we haven't been able to get back to it. So if you want to get like an idea of both of our opinions on the Killers as a band and also this album as a whole, and everything, like you can listen to that one, and we also break down the first two tracks. And for this one, we're going to be going through the rest of the tracks off of the album. And yeah, so we'll be doing that. We'll just be going through it, and then probably at the end a sort of just a kind of a wrap up and everything. But before we get into that, so now that I don't know about you, but now that like my opinion hasn't of the album as a whole hasn't, like, I wouldn't say it's changed really, but like it has, like the sheen of the first time, like couple of listens, like the first initial release and all that has kind of, that has kind of come off. So now I can sort of see like the album like more as it is and everything.
Has that affected your opinions on all the tracks, or just like some of the tracks?
I think it's not really the tracks themselves, but rather the like sort of the cohesion of the album as a whole, because like now I'm able to recognize that it is like as like one larger piece. It's kind of all over the place. It's not as succinct as like say like a Hot Fuss or a Sam's Town. You're able to recognize that it's a lot more of them trying a lot of different styles and like having a lot of different ideas that they try to bring some of these ideas together into a bigger thing, but I don't think it quite gels as well as they're going for. I mean, the ideas themselves on like sort of on their own are I think very good and very interesting. But yeah, I don't think that means that I like the album any less. It's just sort of like to me it feels more like a collection of different songs and experiments that the band is doing, rather than like an album that is like, one kind of singular kind of message or tone or anything like that.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. Like it's not like it's changed for you, but like you still like it. You still enjoy the album as a whole.
Also, there's this I've been reading a lot of the interviews and such about the album and the release and all of that. So there's a few things. I won't dwell too much on it because we do have to get to the tracks. But there's this quote that Brandon Flowers said that a lot of people are taking out of context, but it's still kind of like a funny thing in regards to the album and the Killers' music in general. Like how people keep citing this interview he had where he says he writes a lot of 6s and 7s. He feels, yeah. A lot of people have been citing that, and when like the context of that is he's referring to like when songs first, like when they start working on them, he feels like he writes a lot of 6s and 7s, and he only wants to actually go through with the better ones. But people are just kind of taking that part and ascribing it to a lot of the Killers stuff.
Like he's essentially saying, no, my songs are kind of crap.
Well, like, more that like he has like he was saying that it's not outside of his like how it's kind of common for him to feel like he writes mediocre songs. And so when they're first like making albums and stuff, he was talking specifically about how some of the other band members will be like really into a song that they're workshopping, but if Brandon Flowers just isn't feeling it, then he's not going to go with it. And he says that I myself write a lot of 6s and 7s, but I don't want to follow through with those songs. Like, I'd rather follow through with the ones that I feel like are of a higher standard of quality, and those are the ones that end up on the actual albums. So people are taking out of context, but that's a good segue into the other thing, which is that the Killers have been having a lot of inter-band member problems.
Oh, no.
It seems like Brandon Flowers and the drummer Ronnie Vannucci They get along pretty well because they've been doing most of the promotional stuff for Wonderful Wonderful. The other one, Mark Stormer, I believe is how it's pronounced. He seems to be going off to starting to do his own thing, but he says he still has a good relationship with the band and all that. Whereas the main guitarist, David, I've mispronounced his last name a lot, so I'm not going to even try. But yeah, but he says people were asking him about the album, and he's just like, oh, it is what it is. And then he said the most interesting thing he said is that he wasn't even there during the final processes of finishing the album and everything. And his favorite song is "Run for Cover," and the reason he said that is because it's a song that they wrote like 9 years ago, and that's why he likes it. So that has been. That stuff has been backed up. Like he said himself that he wasn't there during the end. I've heard rumors.
Well, I mean, I'm looking right now. I'm on the Wikipedia page for it. I'm looking at like the writing credits, and he right now that I can see only has one writing credit, and that is for Rut. And I don't know if that's just he maybe wrote part of the music or wrote like a line in the song, like helped write the lyrics, but like everything else is the rest of the band with like a few other people. One's even written by my boy Brian Eno.
Yeah, they gave him a writing credit on the song that I don't know if he was directly involved in helping it, but I know it's a tribute to him, which is Some Kind of Love. But speaking of that, enough about like the Killers and their problems as a band.
Let's get on to
the tracks. So we talked about Wonderful Wonderful and The Man, which were the first two tracks, which were two of my personal favorites. The one that now we're going on to the third track, which is the one that I personally liked the least out of all of them on the album. And it's kind of weird because I've been like reading and watching reviews on it, and like a lot of other people seem to like be responding like less to the songs that I like and more to like a lot of them really like Rut and everything. Which I can sort of feel, I can sort of understand that, but like personally for me, the music, like we've said before that the Killers and what I really like about them is that as someone who doesn't like 80s music, they sound like sort of a distillation of the best things about 80s music. Like they're like I've heard the phrase before on a different podcast, and this is in regards to like movies and like movie remakes and reboots, of how there's this thing where movies nowadays, if they're doing a remake or a reboot of something, their strength is that they don't one-to-one, like they don't directly recreate the movies before and like the feelings of them. They are good at recreating your memories of those, of what you feel like that stuff was like. So the Killers, they don't directly make music like the 80s, but they make music that is what people think that 80s music sounded like.
Right.
And they make like good stuff of that. And I feel like Rut, the reason I don't like it is because it leans harder into the 80s and 70s kind of stuff that I really don't like, of that more of that soft rock kind of thing, because it's a very emotional kind of subject matter, and it's about Brandon Flowers writing about his wife's like troubles with like PTSD and all that stuff and depression. And I think the writing on it is good. It's just, for me, what really brings it down is the music itself.
Right. I mean, I remember when I listened to it, I didn't have any issue with the song itself. Like I listened to it, and I remember you were like you gave your opinions on social media before that.
Right, like when the album dropped, I gave my first gut reactions of all the tracks.
So when I saw those, I was like, I'll keep those in mind, and so I went in all these tracks. And excuse me a second.
Yeah, same.
So when I went and listened to the album, I kept all those in mind when I listened to it and be like, right, let's see what reactions I get from these. And for the most part, it was pretty on the same level as
Right,
you.
like some of them you agreed with me, some of them
Mhm.
like you differed.
But I really didn't have an issue with Rut. Like Rut was one that I was like, this is a fine and good enough
See,
song.
it's not like I don't think it's a bad song.
Mm-hmm.
It's just the one that I responded to the least when listening to it. Like that song, like whereas with Rut, it was just sort of like I listened to it and I had the most reaction of like I don't really care for this one too much. And then the song after that, Life to Come, I'd say out of all the tracks is the one that like I have like the most neutral response. Like I don't think like now thinking back to it, I was going to do a quick re-listen of the album while I was getting up and getting ready this morning, but I ended up not doing that. And so I struggle to remember anything about Life to Come.
I was just about to say the same thing and be like, I cannot tell you what that song sounds like or what like I remember about that song. That was one of the ones that completely like it was like, oh, I listened to this, and then I just kind of forgot about it after that. But like I said, Rut is one that I like I said I don't have an issue with. I thought it was kind of like nice and like cute sounding, and it was I I don't know if I've said to you which one the one I found the one that did the least amount for me was.
Right.
But we'll get to that.
Yeah,
when we come
we'll
to
get to
track
that. But
and
yeah,
I'll
I
tell
think it's a very sweet sounding song, and when it
Mhm.
first started, and it had that sort of I don't know what the specific effect is called. I know that ELO did it a lot.
vocoder.
Yeah, yeah,
It's like
of
the
that one.
keyboard where it's like like they talk as they do it.
Right, yeah. And like when that started, I'm like, "Oh, this is nice. This might be like a cool kind of thing." And then it just sort of like leaned into like it felt to me like the music felt more like it was kind of like boring soft rock, like it felt like a Bryan Adams
Like
song.
air supply.
Yeah, I don't know that.
Oh God, what's the song? I'm all out of love. I'm so lost
Yeah,
without you.
it sounded like that, and it's like that kind of genre that I really don't respond to. I don't know what's about it, but it's like just something of like there's like no energy to it. It's like it takes all of the it sort of reminds me of like this is gonna sound bad. Not Rut. Rut is like better than what I'm about to say. I'm saying that kind of music in general, like the I'm all out of love thing
So,
that you
yeah.
just sang. It reminds me like when I think of it, I think of the same vein as like music put into like Disney Channel movies of like it has like if you put a rock song in a Disney Channel, if there's a rock song in a Disney Channel movie, it has guitars, it has drums, it may even have like a bass and everything. And it has a singer singing words. It's just like all the stuff is there, but it feels like cheap and like kind of not there and like very generic. Like that's the thing I think I really don't like about like that soft rock thing. It's like it feels like it doesn't have any character to it.
I mean, when I was a kid, I used to say like if I heard something in like a Disney Channel or whatever, I used to say to my parents, be like, "Is that a real song?" And it used to confuse them for a longest time.
Yeah,
Be
it
like,
doesn't feel like it doesn't feel like a real song.
Uh-huh.
It's like this weird thing of like it feels like it was just kind of like farted out.
Yeah, yes, and that's what they were like. I don't get what you mean by that, and I'm like, well, and I would go off of like my limited knowledge of songs at that time. Like, We Are the
Right.
Champions is a real song, and like name a couple other ones. Be like, those are real songs, but this sounds like a made up song.
Yeah,
Which really-
this sounds like it does like that is the best comparison that I have. It sounds like, with Disney Channel music, it sounds like we need something that is not copyright that sounds like music. It like sounds like a rock song and everything, not a specific rock song, but just a rock like a general rock song. that we can like it can be on the background of this kid's movie and it'll be fine.
Yeah, like that kind of background score. So like, say you want to have a scene where the kid's rocking out in his room
Yeah.
because he's like a cool kid, and then like, they play generic guitar music,
Yeah.
like, and stuff like that.
Or like even worse is like if they like try to have like the cooler kid who's like supposed to be a punk but not really, and they have like
Mhm.
generic like punk music,
Yeah.
and that's the worst. But like, and then if you go and like just like rolling back a little, I feel like the early '90s, like all the music I've heard from the early '90s, falls into the category of like just boring kind of soft rock.
Oh yeah, that
it's
was the
all-
time for like power ballads and stuff like that.
It's power ballads and like hair metal, power ballads and everything.
Well, hair metal was on the way out in the early
Yeah,
90s. Thank
like
fuck.
what hair metal became, because I didn't like hair metal as what it started out as, and I really didn't like what it became. Like I just don't like hair metal in general.
No. I mean, it came from glam rock, which some glam rock bands I liked, like
Right.
David Bowie is considered a glam rock.
Yeah.
Sweet, whatever you want to call
See,
them.
yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, so like where it came from, like it was just theatrics, but like the members still played the instruments well,
But
and
like,
didn't like fuck, shit, man. I don't know.
in the early '90s, like I see like a Bryan Adams like singing anything I do it for you, and like that song. Like that is
Look into my. I
Yeah,
can sing that now
it's-
because my voice is all fucked up.
it's awful, and I hate it, and that's what Rut reminds me of.
But
and
every time it comes on the radio or on my iPod, I will fucking belt that out the top of my lungs. I tell you that.
Okay, that's fine. It's just
I hate the song.
Yeah.
And if like someone was like, "Oh, do you like that song?" If I was singing it in my car, I'd be like, "No, I can't fucking stand this song." I would die for you.
But yeah, it's that kind of music that Rut reminds me of, and I really want to like Rut, but like I can't get out of my head that it sounds like a Bryan Adams song. So that's my thing. Like
Maybe
very
why people like it, because they're like, "Oh, this is like something that we would have liked if it came out in like the late '80s, early '90s."
But
and
yeah,
there's,
it's
like, a
not even
nostalgia for that.
it's not even like general like people. It's just like I've seen like music critics and everything like say that they like Rut.
Yeah, well, music critics a lot of times have fucking garbage tastes. Do you know who Robert Christgau is?
I think you've brought him up before. I think you talked about him in the last episode.
Yeah, Robert. Well, if I did, I apologize. I'm going to talk about him again. Robert Christgau talks about he hates certain genres to the point where he just gives out bad reviews just because that genre is that album or band is in that genre. Like he hates jazz fusion, he hates Latin music, he hates prog rock. Like he hates genres that really, like, a lot of them I like. Like I'm not a huge jazz fusion guy, but like there's a lot of bands out there that have
Right,
interesting
but I
stuff.
know that you're a huge prog rock guy.
Yeah, so every time I see a review for like Court the Crimson King, one of the fucking best albums to ever be put out by a progressive rock band, and he gives it like a D-, I'm like, fuck you, man, you fucking pretentious cunt.
And then I see like I go online and like I like because I don't know a lot of music reviewers, but
I don't
like,
either. I just know him and like just all music and like stuff like
Right.
that, which makes it sound fucking.
and then
Like Pete Travers from Rolling Stones, like I
Yeah.
know a couple of them. But
and
I
then
don't know a
like
lot.
with the like if I go to like the most popular like music reviewer on YouTube and I watch his stuff, and then like I just like it's a certain point when you watch enough stuff, like if you watch enough stuff by someone, and then or like read enough reviews, you see like you can sort of see like their general taste.
Mhm.
And like with like say like the most popular like YouTube reviewer of music, like I watch his stuff and I watch stuff about albums that I like and care about, and he gives them either like middling scores or like low scores. I just like it. To me, it doesn't say anything other. Like the only thing that it really communicates is that my taste is very different from this person's taste, and
who
there's
is
nothing
that
wrong with
by
that.
any chance?
It's this guy named Anthony Fantano. He has this channel called The Needle Drop.
I've never. Oh, I might have heard of the Needle Drop. I don't know him by name though.
Yeah, he's probably the most well like known like music reviewer out there. And like sometimes I watch his stuff and I just I just see I just tune into he did a review of Wonderful Wonderful. Actually, he did that with
Oh,
someone
okay.
else. They gave it the other guy gave it like a kind of like a 6 or so, and then he gave it a strong 6, a light 7. And I think
Mhm.
it's I'd maybe push it up a bit more to like a stronger 7, or like a lighter. I don't know if I'd go like a lighter 8, but like I also don't like numbering systems.
Yeah, it's hard.
I don't like rating anything on like a numbering system or a star system. The only time I do that is with Letterboxd, because there's really no other way to it's like an easy way to sort the movies and everything.
It's like using what you call them, Ebert and who's it, Siskel's thumbs up, thumbs down. That's simple
Right.
enough.
It's
It's good.
It's
Wasn't good.
it's I can see why that stuff rose to prominence, especially in like the age of the internet, because it's easy. It makes things easy to categorize.
Yeah.
If you can group everything of like, oh, these are all the 10s, these are all the 9s, these are all the 8s, and so on
Yeah,
and so forth.
and that guy Crisco, he gives letter grades
Yeah,
like
and
it's a
or
fucking test.
or letter grade. Yeah.
Dick.
And like I think it's like as I'm getting older and like reading more about like analysis and media and like theory and all that, the more I'm reminded of like this is I'm not going to say this is the worst way of looking at like art and stuff. There's definitely worse ways of doing that.
Mhm.
But there it's just a way of like looking at that stuff that I don't give a lot of weight to. Like I prefer to like read and listen about like people actually talking about
Yeah,
it.
yeah, yeah.
like-
I
it's-
like what's his face for that. Todd
This-
in the Shadows for that, because
Time,
he doesn't.
yeah, he
He
doesn't.
doesn't go like, oh, it's a 4 out of 10. Or,
And then talking about one of my favorite YouTubers is Mr. Sunday Movies.
Mhm.
He does this thing of like how he's never really liked that rating system. So he started out doing this rating system of reviewing movies with he either gave it a best movie ever or worst movie ever.
Mhm.
But then people got confused by that. So like now you'll watch a review that he does, and he's just like, I give this movie a rating of everything I said before this point in the video out of 10.
All right. So I'm watching the time. That's all. So let's move on.
Yeah,
Should we
let's-
even cover Life to Come, because we were both like,
I
I don't fucking remember.
Yeah, we
anything
don't
about
remember
it.
Life to Come. Life to Come, whatever it was super generic, and we've forgotten about it. So
Yeah.
we'll say that us talking about like music reviewers and like ratings and all that stuff, that is our Life to Come space. So we can now move on to the next
Right.
song.
So we got Run for Cover, which I remember I enjoyed.
That's one of my favorites off of the album, but that is a song that they wrote during the time, like around the time that Day and Age came out, which was their
Okay.
third album. So it definitely feels like a bit of a throwback to some of their earlier music. And I really like it. And it was like they didn't really know what to do with it at the time, so they just kind of held on to it, and then they redid it and kind of updated it nowadays and like added it to this album. And I think it's a very good song. It's a very good single. It's one of the singles that they released.
Yeah.
And it has like a lot of the energy that the past 2 tracks were lacking. It's weird going from The Man, which is this the further I get away from like the release, the more I consider The Man as like the crowning achievement
Yeah.
of this album, even if there's songs on it that I like more. Like The Man is their most popular one. The Man is the first song that they've had topping the alternative charts since 2006 and everything. So I like seeing it be successful. And it's also like it's the most fun song that I've heard in a long time.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
it's like it's like a perfect like parody of pump up songs while also being a great pump up song.
And I spoke to you the other day. I was listening to Peter Gabriel's fucking 1980. Oh Jesus, I think 80. Oh God, 86. I'm gonna say. I don't think that's right, but 1986 album. So, which has the song Sledgehammer, Don't Give Up,
Yeah,
In Your
yeah.
Eyes, and there's a song on that called Big Time, which is like, I don't think it was a huge hit or anything, but it's still like one of the ones that like people remember. And it is a parody of like the same kind of thing. Like it's he's talking about how great his life is and how much money he has, and like how amazing like he is as a person, and like he lives in the big time, and like he was
Right.
like, I moved out of my like small town to get to like a big town because that's what I have, big dreams, big aspirations, like stuff like that. And it's totally not what Peter Gabriel's about, especially the rest of the album is very like there's a song on it about like failure that's Don't Give Up, which is someone who is like,
Right.
I can't deal with this stuff anymore, and there is the voices of his friends and loved ones being like, you can't give up, we still love you and care about you. And then I believe 2 tracks after that is Big Time. So and I told you, I was like, this is like an early version of The Man, without the great line of
Yeah, it doesn't.
USDA certified lean.
I love that line. I love that.
I mean,
line.
I like the line in Big Time, not as fun to yell out, which is I show them round my house and to my bed. I've had it made like a mountain range with snow white pillows for my big fat head. Which makes me laugh because like he is totally not like a person with a bloated ego.
Right.
But anyway, about Run for Cover, I remember that's a more fun song than the last 2.
Yeah.
It definitely stuck out to me more than the last 2. Again, I haven't listened to the album in a while, so I can't tell you like specific like, oh, there, it's got these parts in it or whatever. But I remember when I listened to it, I was like, this one's definitely more standout than the last couple.
Yeah.
I mean, again, I didn't hate Rut.
Right, and I didn't hate Rut either.
But
it's
like,
just,
I'm not even remembering the name of the last track.
Life to Come.
Life to Come. Like that probably will be very low on my list as far as like the tracks, if I was to list the tracks and favorites.
Right.
Because like I said, I can't remember anything about that. Like I'm looking at the rest of them and I can remember some, if not most, of the parts of the rest of the songs. But
Right. So, I think we shouldn't like dwell too much because what time are we looking at?
We're at half an hour.
Half an hour? Yeah, and we still have the other half of the album to go through. So I think with Run for Cover, I really like it because it was a throwback to some of the Killers' earlier work. Not like early. Like if you like threw Run for Cover onto like Sam's Town or Hot Fuzz, it would be like so fucking weird. But if you threw it onto like Day and Age, it would fit pretty well. And but at the same time, it does feel updated. It does feel like they polished it.
It's not like listening to a track by an artist who was around the 70s and still making music today and hearing a track that was unreleased and put on that album.
Right.
Because that's fucking weird.
Because like the thing with Run for Cover is it was written years ago, but it's not like it was recorded years ago. This was the recording that they have. It wasn't like made and then just kind of shelved for a while. Like it is like they did record it like now and everything while making the rest of the album. It's just like it does feel like it is like it fits with like music nowadays and does like feel very very energetic, very like like a good like kind of energy, like you feel it and you want to just run and everything. And I think I like songs like that.
Yeah.
So moving on.
Next one is is it Tyson versus Douglas?
I believe so. Yes.
It's Tyson versus Douglas. Which when I heard and like it's a good song. Like it's a very upbeat song. And like energetic, kind of like the last one. But like it's also dealing apparently with like the disappointment of seeing like a childhood idol go down.
Because it's
like, but like for Mike Tyson was a
you have to
dick.
You have to understand that we now know that Mike Tyson was kind of a dick, but back in like
wasn't he the guy that bit someone's ear off?
He did bite someone's ear
off.
So
how could you even go, dude, this guy, I really look up to him. He bit that fucking guy's ear off. So.
But you have to also understand, like, he was just super popular. I don't know if this happened before or after the ear bite.
Mm-hmm.
But also, like, even if it happened, like, I don't know, like, I can't say for sure, but even if it did happen after, like, I think Brandon Flowers was still a kid at the time, and he might have, like, just, like, either not known that or, like, kind of, like, been like, oh, so what? Like, not really understood the implications and how fucking insane that is. But I think the big thing is I think it still works as a metaphor, and like what helps the song is that it's really not about that specifically, but rather it kind of ties back to Brandon Flowers and his own kind of worries about disappointing his kids and like that kind of fear. and
Yeah.
everything. So I think as a metaphor, it works pretty well. In terms of like the music and like the actual song itself, I think out of all of the songs on the album, that's the one that I've warmed up to the most.
Yeah.
Like when I first listened to it, I thought like, oh, it's fine, but now upon a few re-listens, I'm like, oh, this is actually really good
Yeah.
and everything.
I enjoyed it. Remember the first time I heard it, but like I remember hearing it, and again, I was still stuck there at like, and I hate when that happens. Like if you hear something, you're like, cool, but and
Right?
that's
Yeah. Like, yeah. It's just it's another thing of like I feel like it also connects to a certain like generation that we are not a part of
right.
because not only was it a big thing for Brandon Flowers, who was just a kid at the time, but also people who were older than him and everything. Because I've had two different people who I've talked to the album about, both my dad and a former teacher of mine, and both of them say that like they connected to the song a bit more. Like my teacher said he connected to the song a bit more, and then my dad, when he and I were listening to the album, like he said, "Oh, I remember." Like they both remembered watching that moment and like that fight, like they remember that happening, and it's sort of one of those weird kind of like cultural events that like a lot of people who are around it at the time are going to know it or are going to remember it, and it's going to be a very distinct kind of moment.
Yeah.
So even if with some of the stuff with Mike Tyson and everything, like you can't really falter the fact that it was like a pretty good choice for metaphor, because
Yeah.
it is like one of those things that is going to connect to people of a certain age, which I think Brandon Flowers and the other writers and such, like I attribute a lot of stuff to just Brandon Flowers and everything, but like there are other writers on all the songs. It's just his personality like comes through. Like it's clear that he has the the largest kind of involvement in the writing, and like so like a lot of his personal stuff comes out in a lot of the songs. So I usually just attribute it to him, but like not to like ignore anyone else. But like with that, I think the writers of the song were trying to connect to a certain age bracket, because it is like ultimately tying back to the fear of disappointing your kids.
Right.
All right.
So and then the next track is Some Kind of Love, which I really enjoyed when I first heard it. Now, you were saying about the Brian Eno thing. Apparently, so Brian Eno has a really famous song. He did an album, I forget what the name of the album is, but essentially it was like he wanted to make music for like to reflect like being in space and
Right.
doing like for like a moon landing. And there's a song on that album called Unending and in parentheses Ascent, and it's if you hear it, like it's ambient, like the whole album's ambient, but it's one of the most famous pieces of ambient like recording. It's been used in movies, in
Right.
TV shows, like fucking commercials. Apparently there's like aquariums that if you go through like those kind of like tubes where you like the whole like it's all around you, like all the fish are swimming around you, they use that there. It's this very nice ambient piece, and apparently Brandon Flowers wanted to record vocals over that piece, and that was just it. He wanted to just do that, and I think they changed it a little bit, but and then I think that's one of the reasons I enjoyed the song so much, is because when I first heard it, I was like, that's really cool. I love that. Like this is a really nice like
Yeah.
relaxing and soothing song. And now I know that, I'm like, well, that's probably one of the reasons why, is because I like that song. It's a very relaxing
and
and beautiful piece.
I like the general mood of it, and I do like that kind of. I feel like this song did a better job than Rut in Life to Come of taking transitioning from the higher energy stuff of the songs that came before into the more like calmer and better mood thing. Me personally, I'm not too huge of a fan of Brian Eno and ambient music in general.
I mean,
So I didn't.
same, but like I respect Brian
Right.
Eno as a musician
Yeah,
and a
same.
person.
So I didn't respond as well to this song. Like I like it, and I do think it does like a good transitional job within the album itself. It's just like not one of the ones I responded more to. Also, it has probably the weirdest line, the weirdest lyric in it that every like the first time I listen to it and every time after that it makes me go like, okay. It's when Brandon Flowers sings, "You've got the soul of a truck on a long distance haul," and I'm like, what is it? What does that mean? Like, what is that?
I think probably just like you're tired, and
Yeah,
like, 'cause like if you're fucking taking a truck out in a long distance haul, it's like a lot of weight put on this machine
yeah,
that is like going across this long journey, and by the end of it, it needs to be like refueled, and it needs to be like made sure like it's still running okay, and it's like a long arduous journey. And I guess that's just what he's saying. Like, it's a
Yeah.
weird way to say it.
yeah. I think
But I
that
think it's actually pretty
make
cool.
that does make sense. Maybe it's just that I haven't heard that metaphor used before
Mm-hmm.
or anything. So maybe it was like it just gave me a little bit of pause.
It is by far not the least. Sorry, it is far from the weirdest line I've ever heard in a song,
Right?
a
No,
pop
no.
song.
It just I think it just gave me flashbacks to like bad, like country music metaphors involving trucks and
Right. I can get
and
that.
like you're Connor. Have I ever told you that I think your body's like a back road?
Moving on. But I really
fucking hate that song.
I liked Some Kind of Love.
No, Some Kind of Love is good. Body
Um,
Like a Back Road is awful.
yeah, I'm not gonna disagree with you there. And then next track is another one I really liked, which was Out of My Mind.
Oh, I love that song.
I heard it and I was like, it made me think. The title alone, I kept for some reason all that could come into my head was ELO's "I Can't Get You Out of My Head." I
Right.
can't get it out of my head. Which it's not the same as, but it's got a similar feel to it with like that kind of slower kind of like almost sad feeling to it.
Yeah, like there's definitely a bit of I feel like in a lot of Killer songs there's a lot of melancholy
Mm-hmm.
like running through them. Like Hot Fuss was definitely the angstiest like album that they've made. And then I feel like Sam's Town kind of refined that into like just kind of like a melancholy that they've kind of carried
We're
through.
older, we're more tired, you know.
Yeah, and I feel like
there's a song called "When You Were Young," so like
yeah, I feel like
you wouldn't write that when you're 20. I mean, you might, but
you
like
you don't write that when you're 20. You write that when you're 26.
yeah.
So yeah. With Out of My Mind, and I feel like even more so with the two tracks that come after it, there is like it does have that standard like Killer's kind of energy to it, and that like that good kind of sound, but it also has like a kind of like a kind of melancholy of a failing relationship,
Mm-hmm.
and I say the singer as in the person like who is
The
like
speaker
the
in
speak
the song.
like say the speaker and such.
If this were a poem, which I mean,
yes.
music is poetry.
Yeah.
So.
And how he's struggling with like this relationship that doesn't seem to be working, so he's just kind of wishing that he can just forget about the person and stop worrying about her or him. I don't know if it specifies. But
Let's say it doesn't, because that always sounds better.
yeah.
Because like people are like, oh, it's ambiguous.
Do you-
Is Brandon Flowers boning some guy?
But do you know something that like this is completely unrelated at all, but it's something that annoys me is when like there's a song traditionally performed by someone of a certain gender, and then when somebody of the opposite gender covers it, they change all the like pronouns and
Mhm.
stuff so that they don't come off as like gay. And that annoys me because I'm like, just sing the original song.
It doesn't bother me. Like if you want to make it so that like
I don't know.
like some songs,
for me, it sounds forced to me. Like
I think it's weirder. Like if because there was an example that was brought up. I was looking up just for fun one day. It was like best covers, and one of them that showed up was a Jack White cover, or sorry, White Stripes cover of Jolene by Dolly Parton. Now, White Stripes are a band that I really don't care for that much. I don't
Really?
like that whole like out of tune, like sloppy sound that
for
they
me,
go for.
they're not one of my favorites, but they've got plenty of stuff that I like.
I
so.
think Jack White's a fine enough songwriter, and like I wouldn't say like he's not a talented dude. Like he's done songs that I've listened to, and I've been like, oh, I like this. Like
Right.
they go for that kind of. They're going for the same kind of thing at times that Zeppelin were going for with that dirty blues. I'm not
Right.
comparing them to Zeppelin in any way other than that they're just kind of doing this
They're doing a similar
messy,
kind of thing.
sloppy kind of bluesy music. But their cover of Jolene is shit. It is not great. Like it's Jack White like is just all over the place pitch wise. And one of the things that people praised about it is that he doesn't sing, he doesn't change the pronouns in it, so it's still Jolene, 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 Jolene. I'm begging, oh please don't take my man, or something. How the lyrics go. So people were like, oh, is he implying that he's bisexual? And I'm like, no, he's just not fucking changed the lyrics, which I really don't care about. I remember there was like the 50th anniversary of like the Beatles or whatever, like the 50th anniversary celebration they did, and Katy Perry went up and sang Yesterday, but she changed the pronoun in it, and people were like, fucking outrageous. Why would you change the pronouns? It was like, because she's a woman?
For me, it feels like there's this, again, tying it back to the stuff people have talked about in movies. There's this thing in movies, which I think was originated by Red Letter Media, but maybe not, of when characters have a case of the not gays. It's when movie makers and writers and actors go out of the way to make sure the audience knows that the characters are not gay, like really bending over backwards. It's like essentially if you ever have two dudes like in a movie and they're going through and they bond and they're just like friends and everything, it's when they force in the guys to talk about it's just like every 5 seconds, man, it's just like, oh, I love chicks and my wife and everything. Like they're forcing, they don't want people to think that like there's even like a hint of gayness, and for me it feels like unnecessary.
So
and
you mean like what they did in Y Tu Mama Tambien, but without the payoff of them getting together at one point?
I don't think I've seen that movie.
Oh
so.
shit, I'm sorry.
But basically, like, really going out of the way to make sure it's like, oh, don't worry, we're not gay or anything. I'm like, it doesn't matter. Like,
I mean, yeah, it doesn't matter. Like if you want to sing Yesterday, we'll just go back to that one. Yesterday, without changing the pronouns, and you're a woman, like whatever. But like, if you want to change it so that it like makes sense, because like,
well,
like,
that's
it doesn't make
that's the thing
sense. Like if you're a woman, you say, "Yesterday, I'm not half the man I used to be." Like okay, like that's not a gay thing. That's just like she knows she's not a man.
But
she's not
tying it back to the Killers. The
Yeah.
Killers, on certain tours that they did, I think it was around the time of Day and Age, and like different charity events, they would do really good covers of Girls Just Want to Have Fun.
I was
and
gonna
everything.
bring that one up. That's an example that I think like
And
if you sing
and
that,
they didn't change anything
Yeah,
about
you
it, and
shouldn't-
I actually like that.
like, because that's still like there's no mention in it to her. Like it's like you can be a guy and say girls just want to have fun.
Well, no, like there is actually a direct kind of thing. It's in the last kind of little verse before the final like choruses and everything when the singer is saying, some boys take a beautiful girl and hide her away from the rest of the world. I want to be the one who walks in the sun because girls just want to have fun and everything. And I like that they didn't change that because it's just kind of the feeling of like, people are really weird about gender stuff and like gender norms and stuff. I feel like it's subtle, like it's a subtle thing, and like arguably it's meaningless, but I feel like not going out of your way to change stuff like that and just being okay with singing that kind of stuff like is sort of like signaling that we're starting to go from like not being so uptight about this. Like a woman,
I
like
think
a woman
if we want to be less uptight about it, we should stop freaking out when people change the lyric, like like a lyric to a song, just because that is their gender or their preference. Like, if they want to like change it, like one lyric, like I said in the yesterday one, like instead of saying yesterday I'm not half the man I used to be, yesterday I'm not half the girl I used to be, or something like that, whatever. I mean, I think if it's a song where like the title or the let's use another example. I once heard a cover from like the 90s of the Beatles, I Saw Her Standing There, by like a girl group that changed it to I Saw Him Standing There, and like they switched all the pronouns, and I was like, this sucks.
right.
Like if it's something where you like almost completely change the name of the song and like change like the meaning behind it through it, like, and like for girls just want to have fun. If you made that boys just want to have fun, that would totally just not work.
Right,
as a
right.
song.
I guess now that you're talking about it, like it does make sense. Like say,
I think it would be fun if you did Jolene, but like you just changed the one word in it. Jolene, 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 Jolene. I'm begging, oh please don't take my girl. Like that would be like, oh, that's cool. Jolene's like
that is an aspect
he's
that
threatening. He's this speaker is threatened because this woman is threatening to take his love away from him, and he's like, I can't compete with you because you are beautiful and I can't say that sentence I'm thinking of, much more so than I am.
You do have a good point. I guess I was being very limited with
But
the
I agree
kind
with
of
the
views, and
whole-
I can understand that, like say like someone who is like who's a transgendered singer, and if they prefer like, oh, I would like to, it would just feel better for me to like change the lyrics in this way. Like I admit that is probably the best course of action, and like I wasn't really considering that aspect, and then stuff that you said. So I guess it is conditional and like about like the meanings of the songs and everything. This is probably a whole bit they'll get cut.
I mean, we can keep it in, but like it's just interesting to talk about.
Yeah, but I do admit that like I was looking at it in kind of a limited way, like in efforts of like not like like with people being weird about gender, but like you do have a good point of like if the singer has a personal preference to their own pronouns, then they should be able to. People shouldn't give them shit for wanting to reflect that if they're performing a song.
Yeah, and like, I mean, I'd be a bit weird if a girl came out and saying you're looking at the woman or something like that. I'd be like, okay.
Right.
Like that, like if other people praised it, be like, okay, I can understand if you think that's if it's empowering to women, but this song's a joke song, so.
Right.
But like girls just want to have fun. Like it kind of defeats the purpose that you change the pronouns and that. And I think a lot of people's issues with doing the pronoun changing and stuff like that isn't really because of like sexuality or gender preferences. I think it's a lot of people are like, you're ruining this song because the original one was this.
True,
like I think that's
true.
a part of the issue with it.
Yeah.
With critics and stuff like that.
I think we just need like, okay, so I think ultimately the thesis statement of this is that like don't be too uptight about this kind of stuff and everything, and like not to bring politics into it, but like, if someone has pronouns they would prefer to be called by, don't be shitty about that. Just let them do it.
Even if they're not grammatically correct, it's okay because the English language sucks.
The English language sucks, and people like, they are allowed to want to express their best selves and such, and you shouldn't be shitty about it because you think it's weird. So anyway, Out of My Mind is a really good song.
Yes, Out of My Mind's good.
We barely talked about it, but yeah,
it's a good song.
We have to move on because we spent like 20 minutes talking about that
gender switching and songs. So the second to last, the penultimate track, if you will, is The Calling,
which is one of my personal favorites off of it.
which is
I know that you didn't respond as well to it.
it honestly, like, I think part of the reason, because you were like, it's my favorite song off the album right now, I was like, okay, so it wasn't like super built up in my head. I was just like,
Right.
this is the one Brooks really enjoys. I'm interested to hear it. And I heard it and I was just like, this really doesn't do much for me. It's like the style,
understand
like the
that.
style, I'm not a huge fan of that kind of style, that kind of like southern style, like dirty southern style. I'm just like,
Are you sure? Because like I've heard more comparisons to like a Depeche Mode song.
no,
and everything.
I would not compare it to Depeche
But
Mode.
I feel like I like it because it's kind of weird. Like it does open up with Woody Harrelson reading a Bible verse, and it does tell this really like I think we said before, the Killers are both good at singing songs that are more poetry than anything, and then with songs that are more like narrative. And I feel like this is more of a narrative song, and it's a pretty good one as well, talking about like like a shitty dad and everything,
Yeah.
and then like a son coming back like to with religious fervor, like against his father who's like just dripping with sin. And
yeah.
I feel like the only thing that holds it back, which I think is ironic, is Brandon Flowers' performance on it. Because I think the best part of a lot of Killers songs in their discography is Brandon Flowers' performance and his singing and delivery. I feel like he's one of those singers who's, like, we've talked about this before, but like not one of those traditionally like good singers, but is very good at selling emotions, which is
Right.
what you need for music, which I value more than just having like a pretty voice and all that. But his voice and kind of the direction that he's gone with in his career is he's gone more in the direction of high emotion, kind of like he often like is belting and like really selling stuff and all that, and really like, and it works for the for some of the chorus, but for the most part, he's not as good. Like, I don't think he does as great of a job. Like, he still does a very good job in my mind, but he doesn't do as great of a job as selling, like, the kind of menacing voice that you would need to really have this song work.
It might work better as a like Tom Waits song,
Right. Yeah.
which is what
a
it
Tom
made me
or
think
like a
of, but,
Leonard
like,
Cohen song.
Yeah.
Like Leonard Cohen or Tom Waits, they could really sell this song. They could really sell the verses of this song.
Yeah.
Brandon Flowers can sell the chorus of it. And I feel like just kind of the vocal delivery. I wanted to say this about Out of My Mind before we went into the little tangent of, I also felt like Out of My Mind, like despite being both of these songs being two of my favorites off the album, I feel like Out of My Mind is another one where Brandon Flowers' vocals don't quite sell it as much as it could, especially in the choruses there. And I feel like if they did a few more takes and a few more practices and rehearsals with it, and like really worked on like doing specific deliveries for this, I feel like both these songs would be a lot better. But as they stand, I still really like them. I really like the different mood of The Calling and that kind of like more serious kind of menacing tone.
Right, and some of my favorite singers do that kind of stuff. Like Peter Gabriel was known, like in his early Genesis days, for doing like very long songs that like told stories, and like he would do different voices for each quote unquote character.
One of my favorite artists is Bob Dylan, and he is known like he's like one of the probably the great songwriter of 20th century and everything, and he was very good at telling those kinds of narratives.
Yeah. And I think a lot, like, if you have like a very because I don't actually know much about like Peter Gabriel's, like, if he has like a theatrical background, but he is very theatrical in his deliveries and stuff like that. And I found out he used to wear costumes on stage during Genesis.
Yeah, I heard about that.
And one of the reasons that he did it was because like the PA systems and the little venues they used to play at were so bad that like a lot of people couldn't hear what he was singing about. So they were like, I don't get what this song is. So he was like, well, what can I do to like convey what's going on and what the song's about?
It's that theater background. Oh, I can just convey it visually through costumes.
And some of them are utterly like ridiculous. Like there's one for the Lamb Lies Down on Broadway album where he dresses as a creature known as a Slipperman. And it's just this disgusting bulbous creature.
A what?
Slipperman.
A slipperman.
It's Slipperman, but I always like to when you talk about a creature with a man in the name, it just to pronounce it as min.
Min, yeah,
Like
it's
Slenderman,
the
Scissorman.
the McElroys do that a lot, and that's where I picked that up from. Slipperman.
It's great. But like I'll show you a picture of it when we're done. It's quite horrendous actually.
Oh boy, I'm looking forward to that. So anyway, The Calling. I do like the menacing aspect to it, and I do like the choruses are really good, and I like that a lot. It's just I think Brandon Flowers, his voice doesn't quite like the delivery he gave didn't quite like sell it as well as it could, but I think he still did a very good job, and I really liked it. So,
all right, the last track, which when I listened to it was one of the ones that like got me the most, is Have All the Songs Been Written?
yes, that's a very kind of a somber kind of thing, and I remember seeing some people, some music reviewers arguing that should have it would have fit the Killers' style more if instead of going for like a kind of a somber kind of song, if they did like a big like energetic kind of stadium thing of saying yeah, all the songs have been written, but fuck it, we're gonna keep doing it anyway. And I think it would have been interesting if they had gone that route, but I think with this one, it's still them trying to. I think it's like it's a good example of how this album is a lot of them trying to do a lot of different things and trying to sort of figure out where to go, because like talking about the Killers' progression is that each time that they come out with like an album, they have they try new things, but like also try to like retain like an in-house kind of Killers style. With like they start with Hot Fuss, trying to emulate the kind of 80s bands that they like, the British rock and everything, and like the New Orders and all of that. And then that progressed to the Springsteen inspired Sam's Town, and then the critical response to Sam's Town kind of made them want to not go further in that direction, and then try to go in the Duran Duran direction with Day and Age, and then that progressed further into the okay, so last episode I talked about how Battleborn was a bad album. I've re-listened to Battleborn in the time between recording that and recording this. I've softened on it. I don't think it's a bad album. I think it's a very boring album. I think that,
which, to be fair, is one of the worst things an album could be.
Yeah.
I just realized I said half of that off of my microphone, but that's one of the worst things an album can be.
Right. It's just like there's some interesting things that they try, but they're going in a direction that I think they also recognized that they weren't happy with. And there was like a 4-year gap between Day and Age and Battleborn, and there was a 5-year gap between Battleborn and Wonderful Wonderful. And like Brandon Flowers was doing his own like solo work, and like the others were doing their solo work and everything. So I think this Wonderful Wonderful more than anything is them trying to figure out like what direction they should go in, and everything, and trying all these different things and trying stuff that they're not exactly known for doing and everything. Like I remember when they released The Man back in June, and then I played it for a bunch of you guys, at least for a few of you, like in the car, like driving to Iron Age or something like that. I remember the first thing Liam said when he listened to it is, when I asked him what he thought, he said, "I like it, but it's not the Killers." And I think that is I know we're not talking about the track itself all that much, but more like just kind of going into the album in general because of the time and how we're kind of running out of time. But for me, it feels like they are trying to do these different things. They are trying to figure out. They're going they're going even further. Like they've been over the top before, and they've been kind
Yeah.
of tongue in cheek. And like the Man is them going even further in that direction. And then Run for Cover is like a throwback. It's literally them taking a song they wrote a while ago and recording that. And then you have stuff like The Calling, which is trying weird stuff,
Yeah.
and like
And you wonder, even the title track, "Wonderful, Wonderful,"
is
a little-
so different
Yeah.
than like the stuff that they normally do. And like while while that makes it so that the album itself doesn't really come together as a complete thing, it does, I think ultimately it's a good sign for fans of the band,
Mhm.
because it means that like they're going to keep trying different things. They're like, my hope is that they're self-aware enough to look at this album and see what works and what didn't, and then really like if they don't break up after this, and if they do come out with a new album in however many years from now that takes after this, I think I'm gonna put my money on that album being really great. Like I feel like that album is gonna be something special,
Mhm.
and I feel like Wonderful Wonderful is sort of
The beginning of that.
yeah, it's sort of like the ball's gonna start rolling. It's not quite there yet, but I think it's a sign of really good things to come.
Right. So we're past an hour now. There's still stuff we can cut out, but I think we're pretty good on time here.
Yeah.
I'll just give my quick 2 cents about have all the
Give
songs
your
been
final
written.
thoughts.
Have all the songs been written? I liked. It's also kind of like an apology song. As you look at the lyrics,
Right.
it's like, I just need one more song to get through to you. It's almost like, I know I fucked up, but like I wish I could.
It's expressing that kind of frustration
Mhm.
of like wanting to make really good music and like stumbling in the past, and like that's another reason why I think that like the fact that they chose to end on that like is like maybe contributing to my feeling that the next album is going to be like great.
Yeah, but overall, I like the album. This is my first Killers album listening to all the way through. And it makes me want to go back and listen to like Sam's Town and maybe Hot Fuss. You were saying it was very angsty, and I was thinking about it.
It's angsty, but it's like a good angsty. It's like a great angsty.
Yeah.
Like it's
that sounded a little more like dismissive, like yeah. Whatever.
No, like
But
I love
yeah.
Hot Fuss. Don't get me wrong, Hot Fuss is still an amazing album. It's just it is kind of like there. Okay, so there's a reason that every teenager in the world knows all the lyrics to Mr. Brightside.
Yeah.
Like if you're willing to accept that not only that, but there's a lot of really underappreciated songs in it.
Mhm.
Like the main thing I see about it, which I vehemently, I don't think I said that word right, that I very strongly disagree with, is that a lot of people say is like, oh yeah, Hot Fuss is half of a good album. Like the first half is a great album, the rest is no. The rest is also great.
Do you know what's half a good album?
What?
The Wall.
Really?
And that's considered one of the greatest albums of all time. So if you can do half a fucking good album and it's talked about as well as The Wall, then I don't think there's an issue with that.
It's just like the thing is like with Hot Fuzz is the first 5 songs are all like instant classics and like amazing, and then everything after that is also really great but kind of gets overshadowed because the first 5 tracks of Hot Fuzz are Jenny Was a Friend of Mine, and then Mr. Brightside, then Somebody Told Me is first, third is Smile Like You Mean It, and then fifth is All the Things That I Have Done, which has the I got soul, but I'm not a soldier. Like,
okay.
you know, and like those 5 songs like are like that collection of 5 songs in that order is like, oh my God. But then like after that, people kind of dismiss the rest when it's also followed up by Andy Your Star, which is a great song, and then it has other really good songs later on and everything.
I mean, and I think that's fine as long as if you have good songs on the album that people remember. And then there's some tracks on there that are like, Like, I mean, we just talked about this one. There's some tracks on here we were struggling to remember.
Right.
And like I'll go back to The Wall for a second before we close, because Pink Floyd's the only thing I know how to talk about. The Wall is a double album, which is a huge mistake. It should not have been a double album, because
And this is coming from you, who's a really huge Pink Floyd fan.
oh yeah, like I think The Wall gets way too much credit. Like I think it's fantastic. Like it's good. I don't think it's the greatest album they've ever put out. Dark Side's one of the best. My all-time favorite is Wish You Were Here. I
love Wish You Were Here. That's my favorite that they've done.
It's like every track on that album is stellar. Like don't skip a single track on that album.
There's
Wall,
only 5 tracks.
I know, but they're all amazing. Like even Welcome to the Machine, that's one that like a lot of people are kind of like, it's a bit too weird, and I'm like, it's fucking great. But The Wall is a double album, which means there's more tracks on it, and there's a lot of tracks on there that you're like, why is this here? Why is Vera here? Why is there a 30-second track on this album? And if they had cut out a lot of that stuff, which I think if you were to say that to Roger Waters, like during that time, hey Roger, why don't you cut that off? He'd be like, fuck you, I'm in charge of this album.
I feel like that's a thing with a lot of artists of when they start to when they get successful enough and they get popular enough, then they get enough say and enough clout that they can kind of do whatever they want, and they don't have anyone to rein them in. I feel like every great artist needs people to rein them in and edit them.
Well, and the thing about The Wall is it's really not a Pink Floyd album, because Roger Waters.
It's a Roger Waters album.
Roger Waters wrote like almost every track on it. He sings a majority of them. David Gilmour only sings like 4 or 5 songs on the album. He only wrote, I think, 2 songs. And one of them is he wrote part of Comfortably Numb, and apparently him and Roger Waters fought intensely over the writing that song, because Roger Waters was like, I wanted this bare bones track that's just kind of like acoustic guitar, and David Gilmour was like, do you not realize the potential this song has as being this like intense emotional song?
Which song is
Comfortably Numb's Hello, is there anybody in
yeah, I know that song.
So they just kind of combined albums. David Gilmour wrote 4 or 5 different solos, and then cut and paste them all together so that there was like this big like epic one at the end, which he's really proud of, and he should be. It's fucking great. But I think Roger Waters, like by that time, he had an idea which was great. Like it was an idea of like a wall that separates you from reality, and he got that idea because at a show once a fan was harassing him, and he lost his temper and spat in the guy's face, and he was like, oh my god, he was like, that just broke down my wall. And like he wrote this about the idea of like setting up a mental barrier between you and everyone else in your life, and taking it to the extreme, where you literally just shut yourself off in your mind and like just go insane. And it's a good concept, and it's there's some tracks on there that I really like, even some that if you listen to out of context, maybe because he talks about becoming like a fucking fascist, like neo-Nazi dictator, where there's a line in one of the songs where he's talking about putting people of certain ethnic groups up against the wall and shooting them. And I can't really listen to that one out of context, because if I play that in the car with a friend, they're gonna be like, what the fuck do you listen to? And like, it's Pink Floyd, it's okay. But like
I feel like whenever stuff gets, I feel like every artist at one point in time, if they're successful enough, they're gonna try to go for the huge, ambitious like project that like I personally I really like I don't know if I'd say I really like the most, but like I'm often the most fascinated by art that is like flawed and like messy but like ambitious and everything. But I like those are the stuff that I'm more easily able to admit, like, oh yeah, this has a lot of problems in it. Like you talking about The Wall reminds me of how I think that the White Album by the Beatles falls into that category. Like
double albums are hard.
Yeah,
because there's so much space on the album that you have to fill it up with.
And it's less focused, especially with the White Album, because the White Album was essentially all 4 of the members testing out what was going to be their solo careers. And because of that, you get just this huge jumble that like a lot of the songs work and everything. A lot of the songs are great, but as an album, it just does not work.
Yeah, and like you said, there's some songs on there that are fantastic. There's like While My Guitar Gently Weeps.
And there's
I
also
like
Revolution 9.
Yeah, I like Helter Skelter despite all the negative press it got with Charlie Manson.
Yeah, Helter Skelter is still a great song.
I used to hate it as a kid because I was like, this is associated with a mass murderer.
Also, Charles Manson just died.
Fuck
that guy.
Like, did you hear that apparently people were going online and being like, listen, Charles Manson, like, and like talking things about like his music and talking
Fuck
things
that.
about No, the guy's a fucking psychopath. The guy made shitty music, which is one of the reasons that like he went crazy is because no one picked up his music because it fucking sucked.
One of my favorite things was that he tried to I remember reading this. I might be getting this wrong because I only saw part of the story, but there was I think he tried to join like the Beach Boys.
He was friends with Dennis Wilson, which makes total sense because Dennis Wilson was a fucking drunk maniac.
Right, but there was some member of the Beach Boys who like after they said he couldn't come into the band, he like found him after a show and like had like a bullet and he's like, "Do you know what this is?" And the guy's like, "What?" It's like, "It's a bullet. How would you like this to how would you like your family to get this or anything? How would you like your kids to get this?" And then the guy beat the shit out of Charles Manson for saying that.
I like to think that's Brian Wilson because Brian Wilson lost his mind.
I don't think it was Brian Wilson. I think it was one of the other ones because I didn't recognize the name.
Maybe it was Dennis Wilson.
It might have been Dennis.
Because it was Dennis Wilson, Al something, Mike Love, Carl Wilson, and Brian. And Carl was like tiny. And Dennis was like 6 feet tall, so I'd like to think it was Dennis.
I just know
who
that
was probably still hammered after the show, like I want you to kill my family. Anyway, so I think that's a nice note to end on. Is Dennis Wilson beating the shit out of Charlie Manson.
Yeah.
Dennis Wilson got chopped up by a boat. Do you know that?
Really?
He got drunk and went out sailing one night, fell off his boat, and I think he got caught in the engine.
Oh, that. Shit,
yeah,
man, that's the worst note to end it on.
Yeah. Anyway, so thank you for listening to the show. Sorry that this came out so late. We've just been everybody attached to the show, and Brooks have been real busy. And we're gonna, like I said, we're gonna try and hammer out some episodes after this. Me and Josh. But I would like to say thank you for listening to the show. Thank you so much to Brooks for coming on the show and talking about the album.
You can find me on Twitter at Squeezy McCheesy and also on Brooks and Zach 100 Years podcast if you want to listen to my voice some more. That show also features Josh Yaskovich on it, who's the frequent co-host of the show.
And you can find us, Josh and I, at You'll Like 'em Pod on Twitter. It's at You'll Like 'em Pod, all one, no spaces, no punctuation. You can also find us on SoundCloud at Conor and Josh's You'll Like 'em. And with that, my computer's about to die, and we have to go do stuff. So thank you for listening, and we'll see you guys soon.
See ya.
Well, we won't see you, but you'll hear us.
Well, yeah, this is the sign-off I always give at the end of my podcast. So,
Okay. All right. Bye.